Welcome, I'm Ronnie Batra and I serve on Piedmont's Housing Advisory Committee. In this video, I'll provide an overview of housing element components. The housing element is one of the 7 elements the state of California requires to be included in a city's general plan, the document that guides city actions and decision-making. Other elements of the general plan guide decisions related to land use, transportation, open space, and safety. As you would suspect, the housing element guides decisions about housing. There are various components that make up a housing element. These components help the city understand housing needs, opportunities, and obstacles in order to adequately create a plan for housing over the next 8 years. A major component of the housing element is public engagement. Focused on a transparent and inclusive process, the city has developed a comprehensive engagement strategy that provides opportunities for input at each stage of the housing element update process. A critical part of the engagement is a website dedicated to Piedmont's housing policy development efforts. The website is kcom-tv. Another component of the housing element is an assessment of existing and projected housing needs in Piedmont. This assessment includes special housing needs for the elderly, large families, low-income households, and persons with disabilities. Assessing existing and projected housing needs allows the city to gain an understanding of who lives in Piedmont now, who will be likely to live in Piedmont in the future, and the unique housing needs of those current and future Piedmonters. With that understanding, the city can develop programs and policies to avoid overcrowding, housing insecurity, and segregation in order to better serve the Piedmont community as a whole. Producing a site inventory of land available for residential development in Piedmont is the third component of the housing element update. This component also determines whether those sites are suitable to meet Piedmont's projected housing needs. If current land uses, policies, and regulations do not provide enough capacity for new housing, the city will need to consider strategies to accommodate the city's housing allocation. A fourth component of the housing element is constraints, which is the term used for barriers, limits, hurdles, and other hindrances to the production of housing. This component entails the review of land use plans, zoning regulations, fees, and market conditions to understand and identify any potential or actual governmental or non-governmental obstacles to developing housing in Piedmont. If possible, the city will consider strategies to reduce constraints to help facilitate housing development. Affirmatively furthering fair housing is another integral component of the housing element update. Promoting fair housing means ensuring access to housing that is affordable, near an area close to resources, and available to people no matter their background. With the enactment of AB 686 in 2018, California's regulation and promotion of fair housing goes above and beyond the federal requirements. In April of 2021, the State Department of Housing and Community Development released specific guidance on how to assess housing needs and constraints to ensure cities are evaluating fair housing accurately. The city will look at the distribution of people and housing in Piedmont and regionally, compare this to the location of resources, and identify if there is any pattern of segregation. Please know that the Piedmont City Council rejects racism in all forms and has directed staff to evaluate all city services to ensure racial equity. City staff will be evaluating the 6th cycle housing element to make sure that it conforms with the City Council's direction and the state's requirements to affirmatively further fair housing. An important component of the housing element update is the review of the previous housing element. For this, the city will assess how effective the 5th cycle housing element was in achieving Piedmont's housing goals for that cycle. The goals, policies, and programs that worked well will likely be carried forward into the 6th cycle housing element update. Finally, after reviewing the previous housing element and assessing any obstacles and opportunities to housing development, the city will develop goals, policies, and specific programs that make up the final component of the housing element. These goals, policies, and programs will guide decision makers and direct staff to perform actions to implement the housing element and help achieve the city's housing goal. This concludes this presentation on the components of a housing element. Thank you for joining me. And to stay up to date on the project, to access more videos, and to learn more about housing, please visit the project website, piedmontishome.org.